Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. This is News Hour. My name is Mark Lin. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. India rejects China's claim on Arunachal Pradesh as baseless. New Delhi says that the northeastern state is an integral and inalienable part of India. India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar makes it clear that international humanitarian law is paramount in any military response, reiterates two-state solution to Palestine-Israel issue. India's massive election cycle begins its second phase. Notification issued for elections to 88 lower house seats across 12 states and 1 union territory to be held on April 26. Search efforts resume for 4 missing after 2 bodies are found in a submerged truck. Supply chain disruption concerns arise after Baltimore bridge collapse. And Sam Bankman-Fried's judgment day in a New York court for stealing billions of dollars from customers of his cryptocurrency exchange FTX. Well, India has always supported the two-state solution to the protracted Israel-Palestine issue. India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar reiterated that stand while in Malaysia on a bilateral visit. He also made it clear that what happened on October 7 was a terror attack on Israel. But he acknowledged that any response must be taken after taking into consideration international humanitarian law. Here's an update on the Israel-Hamas conflict.
It's been 174 days since the horrific attack by Hamas terrorists killed 1,200 people, with the terrorists taking 253 hostage. Israel has since mounted a resolute military campaign in Gaza that has targeted Hamas infrastructure and its proxies. Both Hamas and Israel have been accused of grave war crimes. A team of UN experts reported reasonable grounds to believe rampant sexual violence by Hamas against Israeli hostages and similar violence against Palestinians by the IDF. Israel also stands accused of pushing Gaza towards famine. The World Food Programme said famine is imminent in northern Gaza. Malnutrition among children is proceeding fast, and some 70% of the population in North Gaza are gaunt with hunger. The World Food Programme is doing its best to feed 1.45 million people in Gaza each month. Together with partners, WFP says it has enough food supplies to feed all 2.2 million people across Gaza, but that requires Israel to allow more routes into Gaza, including from the north and use of Ashdod port. India's Minister of External Affairs, who was in Malaysia on a bilateral visit, reiterated India's support for a two-state solution, acknowledging that the Palestinians have been denied a homeland.
On the one hand, what happened on October 7th was terrorism. On the other hand, nobody would, countenance the deaths of innocent civilians. Countries may be justified, at least in their own minds, in responding. But you cannot have a response which does not every response must take into account something called international humanitarian law.
Hamas still holds more than 130 Israeli hostages in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called off a planned visit to Washington by a senior delegation after the US abstained on a UN vote on a ceasefire, allowing its passage. But the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant was in the US and held wide-ranging discussions with senior US officials through the week.
Rafah was one of the many topics discussed with Jake Sullivan, Tony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, and Bill Burns. The Prime Minister's office has agreed to reschedule the meeting dedicated to Rafah.
It appears that Palestinian terrorists remain emboldened. Israeli security on Thursday set up a checkpoint near where a gunman had opened fire on vehicles in the occupied West Bank, wounding at least 3 people, including a 13-year-old boy. Israeli media said a man wearing a military uniform opened fire on passing vehicles, hitting a school bus in which a 13-year-old boy was hit by shrapnel and 2 other men were wounded in separate cars. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, as the Russia-Ukraine conflict continues, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba arrived in India, aiming to advance Kiev's vision for peace in Ukraine and also to bolster ties with India. Amid reports of the West supplying F-16 fighters to Ukraine, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said that they will be shot down by the Russian forces if used, while Ukraine has asked NATO partners for air defense supplies after Russia has hit energy systems there. Let's take a look at this report.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba arrived in India aiming to advance Kiev's vision for peace in Ukraine and bolster ties.
The visit of Ukrainian Foreign Minister is happening on the invitation of External Affairs Minister. He'll be here on a 2-day visit. As you would have seen, we have issued a press release in this regard. He'll have a bilateral engagement with the External Affairs Minister where they will go over the gamut of issues that lie in the domain of bilateral relations and also review the intergovernmental commission that was held earlier. They will also discuss issues regarding global issues and regional issues of common concern, and then there are several other engagements also lined up for the Ukrainian foreign.
Ahead of his visit, Kuleba emphasized the significance of India as a crucial global partner with a robust international presence, underscoring the importance of fostering closer relationship between the two nations.
The aim of this visit is to strengthen the Ukrainian-Indian relationship. Ukraine sees India as an important global power with a powerful international voice. We are confident that close cooperation will benefit both our nations.
In the midst of escalating tensions, reports emerged of the West potentially supplying F-16 fighters to Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a warning, asserting that Russian forces would shoot down any such aircraft if deployed. The Kremlin accused the US of exacerbating the conflict by providing financial support, weaponry and intelligence to Ukraine.
First, if they do supply F-16s, they are talking about this and are training pilots. I think you understand that very well. Better than most. This will not change the situation on the battlefield. And we will destroy the aircraft just as we destroy tanks now, as well as armored vehicles and other equipment, including multiple rocket launchers. Of course, if they are used from airfields in third countries, they will become legitimate targets for us, wherever they might be located.
Meanwhile, Ukraine has asked NATO partners for air defense supplies after their energy system was hit. Russia claimed to have conducted strikes targeting Ukrainian drone storage facilities, while Ukraine countered by repelling multiple Russian offensives and launching airstrikes on Russian positions.
Well, federal authorities on Wednesday began the task of investigating what went wrong aboard that cargo ship Dali that led to the catastrophic collapse of Baltimore's Francis Scott Bridge. The bodies of at least 2 of the 6 missing people after the U.S. bridge collapse in Baltimore have been recovered from the Patapsco River. Now, President Joe Biden has promised to visit Baltimore soon, and he said that he wanted the federal government to pay for the rebuilding of the key bridge.
So dock workers were reporting that there were power outages on the ship during cargo operations. And the question becomes, okay, what's the underlying cause of that? Was it something, small? Was it rectified? We don't know. But, that's an indication of problems with the vessel. And that should have been communicated to the pilots who are Chesapeake Bay pilots.
Well, DD India's Sally Patterson gives us an update now from Baltimore. Let's listen to what she had to say.
National Transport Safety board who's given us some more information about exactly what was on that ship that remains stuck behind me under the Baltimore Key Bridge. What they say is that actually there were several containers full of hazardous material on board that ship when it collided with the bridge, and some of that actually spilled into the water, and they say there was a sheen on the waterways. They're still investigating what effect that might have, but in the meantime, they're having to take extra care when starting to look at how they're going to move that ship out of the way of other ships trying to get through into the port. We know that the investigation could take up to 2 years now. That's what the chair told us in a press conference. This isn't the first time they've looked at a situation like this, so they say they know what they're doing. But they said they're not going to speculate, they're not going to come to conclusions whilst the investigation is ongoing and whilst they're at the scene. Now, interviews are expected to take place with the crew members who were on board. That's 2 pilots and the remaining crew as well, to try and find out what led up to that collision. Now, the other major situation here is the fact that, as I say, that port is still blocked, at least by sea. Trucks and vans are able to get in and out by road, but no cargo is being pulled in from abroad to the port here, and that's leading to disruption for shippers, for supply chains here in the US, and actually could have global impacts as well. Something to note is that coal is one of the major exports from the port of Baltimore, and India is one of the key receivers of that coal. So there could be impacts, at least in the short term, of how it's able to be delivered. Cars and sugar are other key exports from the port here. So we're looking to see if the government is going to take steps to try and mitigate some of those potential disruptions. Other ports in the area are stepping in to try and help, but it could take months or even years until things are back to normal here in Baltimore.
Meanwhile, India is in close touch with the crew members of that container ship Dali that tragically collided with the support of that important bridge, the Francis Scott Bridge in Baltimore, and also with local authorities, as 20 of them out of the 21 are Indians.
There are 21 crew members, of which 20 are Indians. All of them are in good shape, good health. One of them got injured slightly and needed to have some stitches. The stitches have been given and he's then gone back to the ship. Our embassy is in close touch with the Indians on board and also with local authorities in this matter.
During the hearing of his sentence, the founder of the now bankrupt crypto exchange FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, apologized to his former colleagues as he braces for the prospect of decades behind bars. The founder of the now bankrupt crypto exchange FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, is being sentenced in a New York Manhattan federal court for stealing billions of dollars from his cryptocurrency exchange FTX customers. Bankman-Fried was convicted in November of 2023 for stealing $8 billion from FTX customers. The former billionaire CEO faces decades in prison for fraud and conspiracy charges stemming from his role in the collapse of FTX. These are visuals of his parents going to the court. Now, prosecutors say that Bankman-Fried took more than $10 billion from unsuspecting customers in one of the biggest financial frauds in U.S. history. Both his parents are very illustrious professors in one of the top universities in the United States. Now, the 29th meeting of the working mechanism for consultation and coordination on India-China border affairs was held in Beijing on Wednesday. The two sides exchanged views on how to achieve complete disengagement and also to resolve the remaining issues along the line of actual control in the western sector of the India-China border areas. In the interim, both sides agreed to maintain regular contact through diplomatic and military channels and also uphold peace and tranquility on the ground in accordance with the existing bilateral agreements and protocols. I beg your pardon. India on Thursday called China's claims on Arunachal Pradesh baseless. The spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs said that India has, time and again, made its position clear and issued statements to that effect. And he said that Arunachal Pradesh is and will remain an integral part of India.
China may repeat its baseless claims as many times as they want. That is not going to change our position. Arunachal Pradesh was, is, and will remain and always remain an integral and inalienable part of India.
India's Ministry of Home Affairs on Thursday extended the Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958 to certain areas of the country's northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh for 6 months. The areas concerned have been declared as a disturbed area with effect from the 1st of April. The step has been taken after a review of the security situation in those areas of the state. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. Political parties continue to gear up for the great Indian election. The court extends the Enforcement Directorate remand of the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal to April 1. India's External Affairs spokesperson tells the US that legal processes in India are driven by the rule of law.
Welcome to Jaipur.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now let's get you the latest on what's happening in the run-up to the largest democratic election ever. Notification for the second phase of Lok Sabha elections has been issued. The elections will be held in 84 Lok Sabha seats in 12 states and 1 union territory in this phase of India. Now, leaders of various political parties have hit the campaign trail. They're making every effort to win over the voters. Let's look at this detailed report.
The process of filing nominations for 88 parliamentary seats across 12 states in the second phase of the Lok Sabha elections began on Thursday. The notification for the second phase of the parliamentary polls to be held on April 26th was issued by the Election Commission on behalf of the President early on Thursday. The last date for filing nomination papers for this phase is April 4th. On April 5th, the nomination papers will be scrutinized in all states and union territories except Jammu and Kashmir. In Jammu and Kashmir, the scrutiny will be held on April 6th. Polling in one part of the outer Manipur Lok Sabha constituency will also be held during this phase. The states and union territories going to the polls in the second phase are Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jammu and Kashmir, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tripura, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal, apart from one part of the outer Manipur seat. In the northern Indian state of Bihar, prominent candidates of the national and regional political parties filed their nominations in Gaya, Nevada, Aurangabad and Jamui for the April 19th Lok Sabha poll. Former Bihar Chief Minister Jitan Ram Manjhi filed his nomination from Gaya as the NDA nominee. He will be taking on RJD candidate Kumar Sarvjit. BJP nominee from Tripura East Parliamentary Constituency, Kriti Singh Deb Burma, also filed her nomination papers on Thursday. Meanwhile, leaders of various political parties have hit the campaign trail in different parts of the country. Mahavikas Aghadi Alliance met in the port city of Mumbai on Thursday, where alliance leaders deliberated on common minimum program and holding joint election rallies. In the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu, DMK candidate from South Chennai and party's sitting lawmaker began her election campaign from T Nagar in Chennai. The AIA-DMK has fielded Dr. J. Jayawardhan as its candidate from South Chennai. In Mumbai, the veteran Bollywood actor Govinda joined Shiv Sena Eknath in the presence of Maharashtra CM Eknath Shinde. On the other hand, Congress party released its fresh list of candidates for Lok Sabha. The party has fielded Ajay Rai from Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh, while former minister Pradeep Jain Aditya has been given the ticket from Jhansi. But Supriya Srinath, the national spokesperson of the Congress, has been dropped. The party has made Virendra Chaudhary its candidate from Maharajganj. Bureau Report, DD India.
And my colleague Anil Thomas, who's keenly following the elections, joins us now from the newsroom with an update. Anil, what's the impact of Bollywood star power in Indian elections? We saw there in that story Govinda joining the Shiv Sena faction.
Well, Govinda, good evening, Mark. Well, Govinda is the latest addition in that Bollywood flair that moves from real to real life, especially, entering the political fray. He's made a comeback after almost 14 years into the political ring. He was a Lok Sabha MP from Mumbai North, and he had defeated, 5-time sitting MP Ram Naik there to back that coveted seat for the Congress in 2004. So, a lot expected from Govinda this time around too. He's shifted his alliance to the Shiv Sena, that is the Eknath Shinde gang or the Eknath Shinde party. But surely the seat that he is looking forward to, Mumbai Northwest, is again very much a Shiv Sena stronghold. And it's going to be an interesting contest because, if he gets a ticket from there, many would be expecting him to come good or to cause another big upset. He's making a comeback after 14 years. But will that impact of that Bollywood star be, will Govinda be able to retain that star power, especially amongst the people, is a big question. But this particular elections has been all about, Bollywood stars making a foray. You had Kangana Ranaut, making an entry into politics or into the political fray from the Mandi seat in Himachal Pradesh. It's that shock and awe value that these stars bring, especially with the people. And I think both these stars have the firepower, the shock and awe value that they bring with the people. And I think that's the very reason why these Bollywood stars have managed to get tickets. But, overall, you see there are many Bollywood stars, who have been part and parcel of the 17th Lok Sabha. And Bollywood surely has that star power to take that along. And even regional parties are following the same. You have, Rachna Banerjee from the Trinamool, who's got a ticket from the Trinamool to fight from Hubli. All these stars are either TV stars or Bollywood stars, but they surely ring a bell with the people when they come to vote.
Okay, shock and awe is what you say. But, like the whole state of Tamil Nadu, which is going to the polls in the first phase on April 19, what are the states that are completing their election cycles in the second phase on April 26?
Well, the biggest among the lot would be Kerala, which goes to polls on the 26th, and all 20 seats that, 20 Lok Sabha seats that Kerala has will be up for grabs. That's not all. Rajasthan in the first phase, has had a share, and Rajasthan also would be completed in this particular second phase of voting. Along with that, the entire Northeast, the 7 sisters as we call, the 7 will be completed. There is 1 seat in Manipur, 1 seat in Tripura that goes to the poll. So all in all, the 11 seats that are there in the Northeast, along with seats in Assam, clearly would be going to the polls. So, Kerala would be the high-stake battle that you would see, where the Congress former president, Rahul Gandhi, will be in the fray. And it's going to be an interesting contest to see how he, will he take the bait of fighting the elections from 2 different places, or will he stick to the tried and tested Wayanad? But a lot of other faces too, or a lot of other political parties also would be looking at interesting names to crop up. But all in all, if you see purely in terms of states getting over, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal are there across the 7 phases. But clearly Rajasthan, that will get over, along with Kerala, that will be the big state, and the 2 northeastern states that get concluded in this particular phase of elections.
Also, the last date for filing nominations for this phase is April 4. That's around the corner. So have the major parties all finalized their lists?
Well, almost certain. If you look at the BJP, that's calling the shots, especially when it comes to announcing candidates. They look certain almost to contest over 440 seats. They have already announced candidates for 402. So roughly off the blocks in that 44-day election battle, BJP very much off the blocks even before the first phase of polling, or for that matter, the first phase of voting is taking place. Almost over 400 candidates being announced, clearly, making their intentions very clear on what this political battle means for them, this battle for 2024 as India decides. But the other parties too in the fray, especially Congress, the states that go to poll in the second phase, they have been quick to announce the names. But it's going to be an interesting contest, especially for the regional parties, the way they approach these particular elections. The 3 seats in West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh for that matter, the 8 seats that go to poll in Uttar Pradesh. Clearly, the regional parties having a task on their hands, especially when it comes to last-minute changes to the candidates before the nominations are filed. That's something that we have seen even in the first phase when the last day of nominations got over yesterday.
Yes.
Last-minute switch, last-minute dash being made, and candidates being changed by regional parties. That's something that we'll be seeing very frequently, and that's expected to continue this time around too.
We leave it there. Anil Thomas, thank you very much for those updates, joining us from the newsroom, expanding the Indian elections for us that are taking place across the country from the middle of April to the early part of June. Now, conducting a general election in the country the size of India is quite literally a Himalayan task. And to ensure seamless electoral process, the Election Commission of India appoints what's called observers. This report tells us what these observers do.
Conducting elections in a country with a population of over 1.4 billion is not an easy task. To ensure checks and balances in the electoral process, the Election Commission of India, the country's election regulator, appoints government officials as observers during polls to oversee the process and ensure fairness. They work under the ECI. The observers are divided into 4 categories: general, police, expenditure, and counting. General and police observers oversee polling stations to make sure that they have necessary infrastructure, support, and facilities. They also scrutinize candidates' nomination, apart from ensuring effective implementation of the Model Code of Conduct, a set of guidelines laid down by the ECI for candidates contesting elections. Expenditure observers keep an eye on the book of accounts of candidates and monitor spending by them during campaigns. Currently, the expenditure limit for general election candidates in constituencies in bigger states is nearly $9 million, while for smaller states it's $7 million. As the name suggests, counting observers supervise the counting process. Apart from their specific duties, observers also address grievances and complaints of the candidates related to the polling process. Their task involves submitting timely reports to the Election Commission, which can also be done using the poll body's observer portal. The contact details of observers are published in local newspapers so that the public can also approach them for any poll-related issues. Observers play a major role in boosting the confidence of the stakeholders by making the system more transparent.
India's Minister of Finance, Nirmala Sitharaman, interacted with professionals from various fields in Thiruvananthapuram constituency in Kerala. And during her interaction, Minister Sitharaman underscored that electoral bonds don't entail any black money transactions. She said that the transfer of money from one account to another account is being done in a right manner, and the electoral bonds have been helpful to all political parties, including the opposition. However, she mentioned that she respects the actions of the Supreme Court in this regard.
I'm talking about the electoral bond as it existed before the Supreme Court gave its orders. It was the law of the land. What it did to what was the system which was prevailing earlier to bringing it one better than what was prevailing then was purchaser or the donor will put his money into an account, and the bond encasher or the political party will receive it in their account. So the account-to-account transaction shows you that it is absolutely white and traceable.
The Enforcement Directorate on Thursday produced the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal before a Delhi court as his custodial remand ended, and the court extended that remand till April 1. Kejriwal has been arrested in connection with a money laundering case linked to alleged excise policy scam. Meanwhile, the High Court dismissed a public interest litigation which had sought the removal of Kejriwal and the prevention of issuing orders while being in ED custody, saying that it is the violation of the legal framework as well as against the principle of fair investigation. Now, India has condemned and also lodged a strong protest and objection with the senior official of the US Embassy with regard to the comments made by the US State Department with regard to the arrest of the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. The spokesperson of India's Ministry of External Affairs in a media briefing said that the recent remarks by the State Department are unwarranted and any such external imputation on the electoral and legal processes in India are completely unacceptable. The spokesperson said that India's legal processes are driven by the rule of law.
The recent remarks by the State Department are unwarranted. Any such external imputation on our electoral and legal processes is completely unacceptable. In India, legal processes are driven only by the rule of law. Anyone who has similar ethos, especially fellow democracies, should have no difficulty in appreciating this fact.
Let's take a look now at other stories making the news. The Global Lawyers Summit took place in New Delhi on Thursday, and the Vice President of India, Jagdeep Dhankar, graced the event as a chief guest. Organized by the American Bar Association, the summit centered on the theme of harmonizing horizons, bringing together law, governance and philanthropy in India and the West. The National Investigation Agency of India arrested a key conspirator of the Rameshwaram Cafe blast case, Muzammil Sharif. He was picked up and placed in custody as a co-conspirator after NIA teams cracked down at 18 locations in India's Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh. A total of 6 lawyers have written to the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud. They are expressing concern over the actions of vested interest groups which are allegedly trying to pressure the judiciary and influence judicial processes and also defame the courts on the basis of stale political agendas. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. France's Macron says that the EU Mercosur proposal is a very bad deal. And we'll discuss the situation in Israel in terms of the offensive against Hamas and also the application of humanitarian law limitations. And Satyam Surana, an Indian student in London, becomes a victim of hate campaign, urges the government of India to initiate an inquiry into this campaign.
Hong Kong passes a draconian national security law. Has democracy died in Hong Kong? Was there a secret weapon behind the mysterious Havana syndrome that shook American diplomacy? And the last decade was the hottest ever. Is our planet on the brink? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. And French President Emmanuel Macron visited Brazil for a 3-day visit to strengthen bilateral ties, especially focusing on environmental concerns, which these were neglected, in fact, during the former Bolsonaro administration. And President Macron met with President Lula, and he pledged joint efforts to halt the Amazon's deforestation by 2030. The two presidents also attended a ceremony for the launch of a submarine project symbolizing cooperation between France and Brazil in defense as well as technology.
French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in the Amazon on Tuesday at the start of a 3-day visit to the South American country. Brazilian President Lula da Silva met President Macron in Belém near the mouth of Amazon River. The presidents of France and Brazil celebrated the launch of Brazil's third French-designed submarine at the Itigua shipyard near Rio de Janeiro on Wednesday.
Our partnership with your high level of cooperation in cutting-edge technology reinforces Brazil's determination to achieve greater strategic autonomy, essential in confronting multiple crises and challenges that humanity faces in this 21st century.
The submarine is part of the country's defense partnership and serves to secure Brazil's 7,500-kilometer long coastline. 85% of the country's oil and 75% of its gas is transported from Brazil's Blue Amazon. The program aims to build Brazil's first nuclear-powered submarine by the end of the decade. This third submarine, built with a $10 billion partnership with France, and fourth is set to launch in 2025. Meanwhile, Brazil and France unveiled a $1.1 billion plan for 4 years to protect the Amazon rainforest. The initiative focused on promoting investments in the bioeconomy and creating a carbon market. President Macron also conferred France's highest order of merit to Raoni Metkuri for his fight to protect the rainforest.
I wanted to say that we will continue to lead it alongside you. When it was necessary to support the foundation and preserve our part of the forest, we were there and we will continue to be there.
During the last day of his diplomatic trip to Brazil, French President called EU-Mercosur agreement a very bad deal that lacks proper climate considerations, while Brazil has said it is ready to sign an agreement.
Moi, je crois très profondément que nous devons.
We need to rethink our trade rules in light of this advantage, which is why I prefer to put my foot down in front of this assembly. I have spoken out very forcefully to say that Mercosur, as it is negotiated today, is a very bad agreement. But I think it's a very bad deal for you and for us.
Mais je pense que c'est un très mauvais accord pour vous et pour nous.
The EU-Mercosur agreement is a proposed free trade agreement between the European Union and Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. The deal took 2 decades to finalize in 2019. However, the agreement is yet to be ratified by the European Parliament. Macron is the first French president to visit Brazil in 11 years, and he is seeking a fresh start after spats with former President Jair Bolsonaro over environmental concerns. During this historic visit, both Macron and Lula expressed their commitment to the conservation, restoration and sustainable management of the world's tropical forests. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, DD India correspondent Tony Waterman now joins us with more on the story from Paris. Tony, EU is the biggest foreign investor in Mercosur. Why is Macron calling this a bad deal?
Well, one of Macron's biggest gripes is the fact that European farmers are being asked to adhere to these new, very strict new carbon emission standards to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and make the industry a lot greener. And these are standards that farmers in South America simply are not being held to the same level. And he says that it's just unfair. But the truth is, Mark, is that Macron, along with a lot of leaders here in Europe right now, are coming under enormous pressure from farmers over this deal. There have been these mass demonstrations, sometimes very violent, taking place for months now. These farmers very concerned that cheaper alternatives will come flooding into the European market from South America, and it will undercut their livelihood. So he is under immense domestic pressure right now as he's on this trip right there in Brazil. But what is quite interesting, I think, is that he didn't scrap the idea of this free trade agreement altogether. He instead said that it was a bad deal for both parties and that they perhaps were leaving the door open to a renegotiation, which could include a lot of other broader themes right now, including battling climate change.
Tony, also Brazil holds the G20 presidency, and both Macron and Lula are keen on environmental priorities. We can see that. But, what can we expect from these joint efforts to halt Amazon deforestation by 2030?
Well, I think the big announcement from this trip was this launching of this $1.1 billion investment fund that is going to help protect the Amazon, not just in Brazil, but also in Guyana. And this is going to be private and public money that is going to be raised over the next 4 years. And the money is really going to be going towards conservation, restoration, and sustainable management of the Amazon, and really fighting deforestation, which surged under the former president, Jair Bolsonaro. This has come under control a bit now that Lula's back in power, but it is something that they really want to focus on. And there was also the talk of creating a carbon market that would reward countries that are investing in natural carbon sinks. These are areas in the world that, because of their vastness, they absorb a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. And the Amazon is one of the world's largest. Its vast tropical rainforest sucks in a lot of these carbon emissions, a lot of greenhouse gases, and basically sequesters it for long periods of time. And the concern with the deforestation is that we get rid of one of these large carbon sinks. The other thing that the plan calls for is protecting indigenous people and these communities that live in the Amazon, because after all, they are the ones that have lived there for generations. They intimately know the biodiversity in that region and really how to protect those areas.
Tony Waterman from Paris, thanks very much for that update. And now let's go back to our top story, which is really about the Israel-Hamas conflict and humanitarian law. And to put this into perspective, we have with us Prabhu Dayal, a former senior diplomat who is well versed in this matter, joining us. Thank you, Ambassador Dayal. Now, India maintains that the attack on October 7 was a terror attack and that Israel is justified in responding. But that response should be as per international humanitarian law. Broadly, what does that mean?
Well, Mark, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. May I request you to ask the studio people to make the sound a little louder for me? Okay. I couldn't hear you properly, but I did understand the question which you asked me. Let me mention that in regard to the Israel-Hamas conflict, the External Affairs Minister made 3 very important points, which are in line with India's long-standing and consistent policy. Now, firstly, he labeled Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7 last year as terrorism. Now, India has been unequivocal in speaking out against terrorism. And I would like to recall that Prime Minister Modi had expressed deep shock at that terrorist attack by Hamas and had said that we stand in solidarity with Israel at this difficult hour. Now, secondly, Mr. Jaishankar was critical of Israel's unrelenting attacks on Gaza. He said that you cannot have a response which does not take into account international humanitarian law, because the world is aghast at the fact that civilians are being targeted in Gaza. And thirdly, the External Affairs Minister emphasized that the Palestinians have been suffering and have been denied their homelands. Now, this is also consistent with what India has been calling all the time. India has been asking for the implementation of the two-state solution. Now, in a nutshell, these remarks made by Mr. Jaishankar are extremely pertinent because civilians in Gaza are suffering the most and are facing a lot of hardships, including imminent famine. And in this sense, I think the Hamas attack on October 7 was a blunder because it gave Israel the excuse to launch an all-out attack against the civilians in Gaza. Of course, it's very important from Israel's point of view that the hostages be returned. There are lots of effort being made so that this can happen and that the war can be brought to an end. But it is quite disheartening to note that the efforts to bring about the end of this war, to bring about a ceasefire, the release of hostages, all these are facing setbacks all the time.
Ambassador Dayal, how difficult is it, after a time, to pursue a military strategy against a group of terrorists who hide among civilians, despite the best targeted response being available? This is for Israel. And also, how true is it that the Arab states are giving Palestine the cold shoulder?
Well, the world is turning its back on terrorism. And by and large, even the Arab countries, the leaders in the Arab countries, were not in favor of Hamas resorting to terrorist steps. And I think there was a lot of opposition to the October 7 attack. Now, we know from our experience that terrorism doesn't lead anywhere, because our next door neighbor, which had vowed to inflict 1,000 cuts on us and had vowed to wage terrorist attacks, the way it has suffered in the end is evident for all countries to see. So nobody wants movements like Hamas around, which wage terrorist activities. And all said and done, in the end, the biggest sufferers have been the Palestinian people themselves. So Hamas's strategy has backfired. And I think this is also the realization in most Arab countries.
But truce talks have failed, we know that, and Israel finds that these demands of Hamas are always unreasonable. How serious can any peace effort be if both sides are unwilling to compromise?
Well, there doesn't seem to be any indication that Israel is in a mood to compromise. In fact, Israel is resisting all steps and efforts, even by the United States, to end this war quickly and stop targeting civilians. And of course, Israel faces this dilemma that the Netanyahu government was blamed for allowing an attack like this to take place, because the bulk of the Israeli population felt that the Israeli authorities had been caught napping. So Netanyahu cannot bring an end to this war. In any case, he wants the release of the hostages. And the Hamas leadership is in no mood to release the hostages. And it seems that for all these reasons, there is no end to this conflict in sight at an early date, unless the United States, Egypt, and Qatar can really influence Hamas's thinking, bring about a quick release of the hostages, and then in turn bring about a change in Israel's attitude and thus end this conflict.
Right. We'll have to leave it there. We don't have enough time for the discussion to continue. But thank you very much, Professor, I beg your pardon, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Thank you for joining us and enlightening us on this subject. Satyam Surana, an Indian student at the London School of Economics, has alleged that he was targeted and called a fascist while campaigning for this year's student union elections. Satyam alleged that just 12 hours before the voting, a well-planned campaign was launched against him, linking him with the Bharatiya Janata Party and calling him a fascist. Now, Satyam was in the news last year when he defiantly picked up a tricolour off the ground during an attack on the Indian High Commission in the United Kingdom by Khalistani elements. Satyam said that the campaign was not only against him, but against India as a whole. Satyam said that he has written to the Home Minister of India, Amit Shah, to initiate an inquiry into this seditious campaign.
I was only one small thing that who was a victim of this hate campaign, but this has a larger picture. It is a very well organized and planned syndicate of all the people in India, outside India, inciting hate against the Indian government and waging a war against the government of India. These messages are highly seditious, and that is the sole reason that I have today written an email to the Union Home Minister and the Union External Affairs Minister demanding an NIA inquiry in this matter.
Well, let's take a look now at other stories making news around the world. El Salvador seized 1.48 metric tons of cocaine on Wednesday. The country's navy detained 6 Ecuadorians and 3 Guatemalans during the operation for allegedly trafficking drugs. The seized drugs are estimated to be worth $37 million. An electrical conductor rail fell off the track in Bangkok's Pravet district today. This led to a suspension of train services until midnight. Passengers were evacuated from the train safely. The incident caused damage to 3 vehicles with no reported injuries. Dozens of anti-mining protesters held a sit-in outside Ecuador's capital, Quito, as tensions continue over mining rights. The demonstration took place to oppose government plans to pave the way for mining of gold, silver and copper. Ecuador has been under a state of emergency since January to quell a wave of gang violence. Traditional Easter chocolate eggs have transformed into sports-themed characters in some Paris chocolate shops. Chocolates molded as egg-shaped track athletes and timers, podiums and medals adorn stores across the Easter holiday in anticipation of the Olympic Games. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. PV Sindhu advances to the 3rd round of the Madrid Spain Masters. The men's doubles semis at the Miami Open will feature the veteran Indian Rohan Bopanna and his teammate Matthew Ebden. And also Chelsea and Lyon make it to their respective semi-finals in the UEFA Women's Champions League.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's the sports news now. And let's begin with the match of Sindhu, 2-time Olympic champion. Olympic medalist. She was not the champion. PV Sindhu beat Chinese Taipei's Huang Yun Sun in the 2nd round of Madrid Spain Masters tournament today. She was the world champion, but the 28-year-old Indian got the better of her opponent in straight sets as she romped to the next stage of the tournament with her 21-14, 21-12 win in the first round. Sindhu, who had finished runners-up in this event last year, in the last edition, saw off Canada's Wenyu Zhang in a lopsided contest. The other Indian mixed doubles pair of B. Sumit Reddy and Siki Reddy made it to the next round with the victory over the Chinese Taipei's Chen Zi-Rei and Yang Chin-Tun. And Rohan Bopanna and his Australian teammate Matthew Ebden are going to be taking on Spain's Marcel Granollers and Horacio Zeballos. This is in the men's doubles category at the semi-finals of the Miami Open 2024. This is the 3rd semi-final for Rohan Bopanna and Matthew Ebden this year, beating Sam Verbeek and John Patrick Smith in the quarterfinals. The duo had won the Australian Open earlier this year. Now, meanwhile, the the women's singles category finalist in the last edition and the 4th seed Elena Rybakina will take on the Belarusian tennis player Victoria Azarenka in the semi-finals. Rybakina and Azarenka are the first semi-finalists of the Miami Open 2024. Rybakina had also won the previous meeting against Azarenka. Chelsea and Lyon have advanced to their respective semi-finals at the UEFA Women's Champions League, while this victory has kept the hopes alive of a quadruple for the team Chelsea. On the other hand, it's a massive victory for the French champions against Benfica. Let's look at this report.
In Women's Champions League, Chelsea women have successfully kept their quadruple dream alive as they enter their second successive semi-final, defeating Ajax. Mayra Ramirez's first goal in Europe opened the scoring in West London with just over half an hour gone. However, Ajax arrived in England with a point to prove after their 3-0 thrashing, and despite the mountain to climb, the visitors made a compelling contest of it. But ultimately, Emma Hayes' hopes of going out on the ultimate high at Chelsea moved a step closer on Wednesday as the London club reached Women's Champions League semi-finals after a 1-1 draw with Ajax. On the other hand, French champion Lyon also advanced to the semi-finals for a record 13th time after a 4-1 victory over Benfica. Delphine Casacarino and Kadiatou Dieni scored 2 goals each as record 8-time champions Lyon won by 6-2 on aggregate basis at Groupama Stadium after a 2-1 first leg victory in Portugal. Lyon was playing in the quarterfinals for a record equaling 15th time, while Benfica became the first Portuguese team to advance to this stage. The home and away semi-finals will now be played on the 20th and 21st of April and the 27th and 28th of April. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts. Connected with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.